Please rise for invocation by Chaplain Carlos Hidalgo, Florida Memorial Hospital, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Or in lieu of that, let's do a silent invocation.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Will the clerk call the roll?
Councilmember Foley.
Here.
Councilmember Tremont.
Here.
Councilmember Stiltner.
Here.
Councilmember Bastian.
Here.
Mayor Burnett.
Here. Item 4, Constitution Week Proclamation. This was the proclamation I read last week at the Constitution Week ceremony on Friday with the Daughters of the American Revolution Sugar Mill Chapter. Whereas September 17th, 2021 marks the 234th anniversary of the drafting of the Constitution of the United States of America by the Constitutional Convention. And whereas it is fitting and proper to officially recognize this magnificent document and its memorable anniversary. And whereas it is fitting and proper to officially recognize the patriotic celebrations which will commemorate the occasion, and public law 915 guarantees the issuing of a proclamation each year by the President of the United States designating September 17th through the 24th as Constitution Week. Therefore, I, Donald O. Burnett, Mayor of the City of Port Orange, do proclaim September 17th, the week of September 17th, to be Constitution Week in the City of Port Orange, and urge all of our citizens to study the Constitution and reflect on the privilege of being an American with all the rights and responsibilities to which that privilege involves. And that was the proclamation for Constitution Week. Item 5, approval of service weapon transfer for Sergeant Justin White. May I have the appropriate motion?
Move to approve service weapon transfer agreement as put together by the city attorney.
Second. We have a motion, proper second. Before we get into this, I just wanted to thank the city attorney and his staff for doing the due diligence it took to get this done properly. The item's open on the floor for discussion. Council comments? There being none, anyone care to speak to the item? There being none, back to us. Final comments, council? Call the roll.
Councilmember Foley.
Yes.
Councilmember Tremont.
Yes.
Councilmember Stiltner.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Bastian.
Yes.
Mayor Burnett.
Yes, 5-0. And we will recess as the council, and at this point, we will open the Town Center CRA's joint special meeting.
Maybe if you can give me 1 second.
Sorry.
We had a
Stan
technical
is
issue
with
there.
us.
I'm gonna have to log in a different way.
Yeah, I'm having some technical difficulty too. This computer.
Scott, you tell me when we're ready, and then I'll have Stan take it away.
Have Stan take it away. 'Cause I'm not
Stan,
sure.
take it away. Is it me?
Yeah.
Because we're a special meeting?
It's a joint special meeting.
Joint special meeting and workshop. This is why we have a clerk that knows what's going on. I'll tell you what. Meeting is called to order. Call the roll.
For the Town Center, Chair Stan Schmidt.
Here.
Michael Benedict. Donald Burnett.
Here.
Drew Bastian.
Here.
Scott Stiltner.
Here.
Chase Tremont.
Here.
Jonathan Foley.
Here.
And for council, Don Burnett.
Here.
Drew Bastian.
Yeah, here.
Scott Stiltner.
Here.
Chase Tremont.
Here.
Jonathan Foley.
Here.
Do I have an objection to the notice of meeting?
No.
Hearing none, the notice of for the meeting is accepted. I'll be opening the items for presentation by staff and joint discussion by the City Council and the CRA. Chairman Schmidt will call for the vote for the CRA, and I'll call the vote of the council at the appropriate time. Item 2 is first reading of ordinance 2021-25. Ordinance 2021-25 is an ordinance of the City of Port Orange, Volusia County, Florida, relating to community redevelopment, amending the community redevelopment area plan for Port Orange Town Center and the Riverwalk Plan Community Concept Development Plan, repealing conflicting ordinances and resolutions, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date.
I lost my spot here.
So I need to approve.
Somebody gonna give me a motion?
So moved.
We have
Second.
a motion on the, do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and second. The item is open on the floor for discussion. Now you may present.
Good evening, Penelope Cruz, Planning. The proposed amendment before you tonight is to the Port Orange Town Center redevelopment plan. Has one amendment, basically to modify the Riverwalk Planned Community Conceptual Development Plan to further encourage development of the Riverwalk area as a waterfront mixed-use destination along the Halifax River. If you recall, at the April council workshop, City Council provided direction to staff to make any necessary amendments to the CRA plan and the Land Development Code in order to assist with and further the development of the 10-acre site in the Riverwalk area. So this is part of that effort. The proposed amendment is to clarify the following items on the concept plan. To remove, you can see here on the left side is the current plan, and on the right side is the proposed plan. To remove the area labels on the concept plan and the maximum number of dwelling units and square footage for each area, and revise that to be in a format that's consistent with the comprehensive plan, which in the comprehensive plan just lists an overall maximum number for each of those for the entire area. It also cleans up some inconsistencies that are shown on the plan, such as units where we have our park.
Gotcha.
So, and number 2 is to modify the area of the Recreation Conservation Project area at the southern portion of the Riverwalk Trail to a dashed line located along the shoreline, and provide a note that the line identifies a general location of the required public use trail, and to expand the general area here in this blue dashed line of the marina project type to extend further south to expand the opportunity to develop more water-based uses. So with that, I'm here to answer any questions you may have on the CRA plan amendment.
Council or CRA?
Just one quick question, and maybe Wayne can jump in on this. Should the parcel at Herbert in US 1, which is now currently being utilized by Art House, should that be getting included in this? Is there any benefit to doing that, Wayne, or not?
It was never part of the comprehensive plan, town center plan. It can still be part of the overall private
Got it.
development by its existing zoning and land use.
But there's no benefit to us or reason why we would want to incorporate that now?
The site as it's zoned, and Penny can go into that, it would allow the flexibility for what we're trying to do.
Okay.
Yeah, that wasn't part, this is specific to just the Riverwalk
Got it.
concept plan that's in the CRA plan.
Understood. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Stan?
One real quick one, Penny. On the path is now a dash line, but that is still required. So
Yes.
whoever gets this land is still required to have that public
Correct. That link.
walkway of some sort
Correct.
all the way down to Dunlop.
Correct. That language is in the city's comprehensive plan as well as in the CRA plan.
Just want to make sure. I know that's come up in the past.
Council, anybody else, or CRA? What do you want to care to speak to this item? Robert?
Mayor, Commission members, Robert Reinhagen, 1425 Dexter Drive North, Port Orange. I really am opposed to this because of the trail. You were supposed to vote this evening with regard to a property rights thing. And property rights being emphasized now by the state is going to really put you into a bind, because this trail is going to become private property. And I just don't believe that you're going to have the ability to fight or oppose developers and their staff of attorneys. When this was debated in the Planning Commission, one of the members of the Planning Commission on the other part of it, with regard to the property rights, tried to vote no. And the attorney, the city attorney, immediately challenged him. And the implication was very clear to me that a no vote was not permitted. And so this emphasis now on private property rights is just going to become overwhelming. And I really am concerned that you have good intentions to put in a trail, but you're just not going to be able to do it. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Robert. Anyone else? There being none, back to the council and the CRA board. Final comments? Stan, we have a motion, a second on the floor for the council, but we don't have one for the CRA, so you're probably going to ask one for one now.
You got it. I need a motion for item 2, ordinance number 2021-25.
So
Moved
moved.
it.
Second.
I'll do it. Move to recommend approval of ordinance number 2021-25, approving the amendment to the Port Orange Town Center Community Redevelopment Plan as recommended by the Planning Commission.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. So clerk, please call the roll.
Jonathan Foley,
Yes.
Chase Tremont,
Yes.
Scott Stiltner.
Yes.
Dave Ashton.
Yes.
Tom Burnett,
Yes.
Chair Schmidt.
Yes.
So that's 6-0 for you. Not bad. I'm not going to
I'm
get.
supposed to announce it though.
I'm going to do the same thing for the council. I won't get 6 votes though. Robin, we have a motion second on the floor. We call the roll for the council.
Councilmember Foley,
Yes.
Councilmember Tremont,
Yes.
Councilmember Stiltner.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Ashton,
Yes.
Mayor Burnett.
Yes, 5-0. I just couldn't match you, Stan. That brings up the next item. The next item is ordinance number 2021-26, which is an ordinance of the City of Port Orange, Volusia County, Florida, amending the Land Development Code by amending Section 2 of Chapter 2 relating to definitions, amending Chapters 17 and 18 relating to Riverwalk Overlay District, and the planned commercial Riverwalk zoning district regulations for the purpose of supporting redevelopment efforts in the Riverwalk area, amending the boundary of the Riverwalk Overlay District, providing for conflicting ordinances, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date. Council may have a motion for approval.
Move to approve ordinance number 2021-26.
Second.
It's a tongue twister, huh? We have a
It
motion,
is,
proper
yeah.
second. The item is open on the floor for discussion. Penny, take it away.
Thank you. Penelope Cruz, Planning. So the proposed amendments before you tonight are to the Riverwalk Overlay District as well as the planned commercial Riverwalk zoning district. They're, as you said, to support the efforts of redevelopment in the Riverwalk area. The Riverwalk Overlay District amendment includes the following items: amending the boundary of the Riverwalk Overlay District, adding the actual boundary of the Riverwalk Overlay District into the Land Development Code, updating the list of permitted uses, uses with special development requirements, and those uses that are not allowed, clarifying that the uses that are listed as not being allowed would be if a property is zoned PCD and the city council has reviewed and approved a master development agreement that includes those uses, and just updating some terms that were updated in previous code amendments for internal consistency. So that's the part related to the Riverwalk Overlay District. With regard to the planned commercial Riverwalk zoning district, similar to the CRA amendment that we just discussed, the text of that zoning district is being updated to revise the total density and intensity entitlements to be in that consistent format as the comprehensive plan. removing various references to manuals, master planned infrastructure, and other regulations that were part of a prior vision for the entire 35 acres to be master planned, adding permitted uses to the mixed-use project type, including outdoor fruit and vegetable or craft market, hotel, marina, water taxi, and medical office, removing the section about the interim conditional uses that expired in 2014, and some cleanup amendments to remove duplicate text, clarify dimensional requirements, or revise zoning district regulations in a format consistent with other categories. Also updating figure 17.4 with the current proposed Riverwalk planned community concept plan that we just reviewed in the prior item. So I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
This one kept you busy, although it's not near as exciting as the next one.
Yes, it's a little bit more tedious to make sure everything was caught.
Any questions or comments from the council or the board?
No.
I see none. Anyone here care to speak to this item? I see none. Coming back to us. Final comments from the CRA or the city council? There being none, Chairman Schmidt.
I need a motion for item 3, ordinance number 2021-26.
I'll do it. Move to recommend approval, motion, move to recommend approval of ordinance number 2021-26, amendment to chapters 2, 17, and 18 of the Land Development Code, case number 21-2500005, as recommended by the Planning Commission.
Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Jonathan Foley.
Yes.
Chase Tremont.
Yes.
Drew Bastian.
Yes.
Scott Stelter.
Yes.
Tom Burnett.
Yes.
Stan Schmidt.
Yes. Motion carries 6-0.
Once again, you get more power over there with a total of 6.
Well, I could vote for you guys, but probably wouldn't be allowed.
Council has a motion and a second on the floor. For council, call the roll.
Councilmember Foley.
Yes.
Councilmember Tremont.
Yes.
Councilmember Stiltner.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Bastian.
Yes.
Mayor Burnett.
Yes, 5-0. With that, item 25, the recommended motions to approve the third amendment to the property exchange agreement. Can I have a motion from council?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion, proper second. The item's open and on the floor for discussion. Oh, wait a second. You don't look like Benny.
Move this up there. This is a cleanup item, Timberman Community Development. This is really a cleanup item based off of the approval of the third amendment. This just kind of allows the dates to match up and also provide the city enough time to complete the property exchange if the dates met in March 21st, 2022 with the Fish Restaurant then. So mainly a cleanup item there, and staff is recommending approval.
Council or the CRA, questions for Mr. Berman? I see none. You must have done a pretty good job with that. Anyone here care to speak to this item? There being none, back to the board and the council. Final comments. There being none, Mr. Schmidt?
I need a motion for item 4, approval of the third amendment to the property exchange agreement. Talk about funeral home property.
Move.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Jonathan Foley.
Yes.
Chase Tremont.
Yes.
Drew Bastian.
Yes.
Scott Stiltner.
Yes.
Tom Burnett.
Yes.
Stan Schmidt.
Yes. Motion carries 6-0.
6-0. You keep doing that. We have a motion and a second on the floor for council. Call the roll.
Councilmember Foley.
Yes.
Councilmember Tremont.
Yes.
Councilmember Stiltner.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Bastian.
Yes.
Mayor Burnett.
Yes, 5-0. Is there any other further business to be brought before the members of the Town Center Redevelopment Agency and the City Council? There being none, I will entertain a motion for this joint special meeting to be adjourned.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The joint special meeting of the Port Orange Town Center Community Redevelopment Agency and the City Council of the City of Port Orange is adjourned. We will reconvene as council. Stan, thank you. That brings us to consent agenda.
Like to pull one.
Item Item 6, public comments on the consent agenda items.
I'd like to pull one there. Is that
Do we
time
have
to
any
that?
public comments on the consent agenda?
Public comments first.
There being none, I think Chase wants to pull something.
I
know
also
we have
have
an item
something.
coming off.
Yeah.
Chase, which one did you want to pull?
11.
And I'd like to remove item 20. It's going to be moved to a future meeting.
Okay, so go ahead and make your motion for the agenda approval along those lines. You're going to motion to remove 11 from consent and 20 from discussion and maintain the rest of the agenda? Is
Yeah,
that the motion?
move to remove 11 for discussion and remove item 20 from tonight's agenda. It's going to be moved to a future meeting, and I'll move to approve the remaining agenda.
That is the motion for the agenda. May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 We have items 8, 9, 10, and 12 through 15. Can I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Remaining items on consent, I have a motion for approval and a proper second. Call the roll.
Councilmember Foley?
Yes.
Councilmember Tremont?
Yes.
Councilmember Stiltner?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Bowser?
Yes.
Mayor Burnett?
Yes. 5-0. That brings us to item 11. Let me get out of the CRA. And into council. Item 11 is Resolution 21-44 to designate funds from the special building revenue available for fund balance for vehicle purchases. May I have such said motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval of Resolution 21-44. The item is open and on the floor for discussion. Chase, it's yours.
Yeah, I don't, excuse me, I don't have a real problem with this, but, and Wayne, sorry, I typically want to give a heads up before I pull something, so if I'm catching you off guard. Just want to know what the use is for. I see it in the description, but we're talking, and I know we have a significant amount of funds in our building department, but we're looking at $110,000 on 2 vehicles, and I'm just wondering what the purpose is that they would need such massive vehicles and expensive vehicles.
Yes, sir. So the building fund, back in the recession, we went very conservative on that fund because everything in that division is funded out of building permit fees alone, and by state law only can be used to implement Florida Building Code. So we cut back quite a bit on expenses. There are now seven guys that go out in the field. This would allow them to have 6 vehicles for those 7 guys. So we had been short vehicles. We were working off of parts and pieces for a while. What we had was the admin people, so the building official, the deputy building official, the people who were in the office doing plan review were just swapping out cars or using them part-time. So this would allow them to have more. The division doesn't have, this will be the first 4-wheel drive vehicle. We only had 1 in the department. I think that's all you got now is in engineering. So
I
they're
think
on
that's my
construction
question.
sites.
I don't have a problem with 2 extra vehicles, but we're looking at a Tahoe and a Suburban. What do they need those massive vehicles for?
The large vehicle is necessary, the 4-wheel drive, to get them on construction sites. So all the other vehicles are smaller vehicles that you can pull up somebody's house and do a water heater, do a air conditioner, or roof inspection. The larger pickup allows them to get out on construction sites. So if they're out working in areas where there's mud, dirt, sand, they need to be able to get in there. For now, they have to wait and use the car in engineering when it's available to do so. The Suburban...
Stop that for again. So right now, they're not, for those places that they need a 4-wheel drive to go, they're using a 4-wheel drive, just borrowing it from a different department?
Or they stop somewhere, or they go out in their own truck and take a risk they can get in and out of the site. So it's not ideal to put them on dirt construction sites in a 2-wheel drive S10 or a Blazer or whatever we've got. The bigger vehicle, the Suburban, was intended to, there's no vehicle there to hold multiple people, so the department is responsible for damage assessment following hurricanes and also does final inspections in groups. So occasionally you'll have multiple people go out on a building for a final inspection, and you can just send them together. So there was no, I don't know if you've seen some of the vehicles, they do have cabs in the back, but they're not really designed to have multiple passengers. It's more where they have their equipment, and so it takes up the space, so it's not very comfortable. I know when I used to ride with the building official, it was kind of difficult to fit in the car. So I think the reason for asking for the larger vehicle is to be sure you could put multiple people in a vehicle. There just wasn't one available for that division.
Okay. I'm fine. Thanks.
Council, any other questions? There being none, anyone here care to speak to this one? There being none, final comments? Call the roll.
Councilmember Colby.
Yes.
Councilmember Tremont.
Yes.
Councilmember Stiltner.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Bastian.
Yes.
Mayor Burnett.
Yes, 5-0.
Thanks, Mayor.
You betcha. Resolution 2144 passes 5-0. Citizen participation on agenda. Robin, do I have any? Okay. Council comments. Why don't we, I normally start over there. Let's start on this side tonight. Drew, do you have anything?
I do not, Mayor. Just
Scott?
one meeting.
I was hoping somebody maybe, do we have anybody here from the Family Days group? Anybody here? Just wanted to make sure we got a plug on that event coming up, and if anybody wanted to articulate that. But normally somebody will
Well, I guess you get to
come and do
articulate.
that, right? Yeah, so Port Orange Family Days starts Thursday. I see our PIO. Can I put her on the spot for a second?
Yeah.
Christine? What? Just for those that are listening and watching, best website for them to get I know it's on our Facebook pages and theirs, but could you maybe just come up and real quick? Man, I really don't like putting people on the spot, so I apologize. I'm going to be in trouble. But normally somebody from the Port Orange Community Trust will show up on the night.
No worries. So everything is actually on our Port Orange City Hall Facebook page, also our Parks and Recreation Facebook page. The whole event is sponsored by the Port Orange Community Trust. I think it's poct.org, and it has all the information. But today I did put on our social media page an agenda, day by day, and all the activities going on.
And
So
that's what reminded me.
yep,
Sorry.
Thursday, Friday,
And that's
Saturday,
on
and
there,
Sunday,
yeah.
and it's visible on our Port Orange City Hall Facebook page.
Right. A lot of good activity stuff.
There's like Jeep Beach, there's performers, and just a lot of fun things for all ages. So
Good stuff.
Good old-fashioned parade on Saturday morning at 10 o'clock.
Yep. Yep,
Thanks.
you're welcome.
Good one, Scott. Anything else?
No, putting the PIO on the spot was all I got tonight.
Yeah.
Chase?
Good one.
We're good.
Jonathan?
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
Okay. As am I. I'm looking forward to Family Days. Looking forward to having some fun. Board appointments, interviews, and reports. Item 17, Citizen Advisory Committee for the TPO. Mr. Bobby Ball. I saw him sneak in. What you got for us, Bobby?
Actually, was not able to attend today's meeting, but I thought I'd let you know that when I get an update from staff, I'll pass it along. And also, there is the road show that the county is doing, and I believe tomorrow's meeting in New Smyrna at 6 to 7 in the Brennan Center is for Port Orange Zone. So, for those of you that are interested.
I think some of us might be a little occupied here for
Yep.
some reason.
Yep. Just thought I'd
We got a
mention.
meeting
Okay.
tomorrow.
That's all I got.
Thanks, Bobby.
Thanks,
Thank
Bobby.
you.
Item 18, Environmental Advisory Board reports.
Hello, everybody.
How are you?
I'm very good, and welcome back. Glad you're all better. Christine Cunningham, Environmental Advisory Board Chairperson. We have a couple items that we were working on. We're still addressing the single-use plastics for events held by the city, where if it's practical, we want to limit how many are used and disposed of, to encourage people to bring their own cups and bags, especially bags this weekend, and also to recognize that please use the garbage cans. And we made a request that we have more garbage cans out for this event, and also with the recycles a little bit more upfront where people recognize them immediately, because we do have a lot of people that want to recycle, but they sometimes can't find those bins. So we ask for that to be done. Fertilizer Ordinance, which is a county-wide activity, and so it's part of what we do, is we support what they're trying to get across and educating people on when to use fertilizer, what times of the year. And so that's going to be one of the two subjects that we'll be talking about. We do have our own table at the event this weekend, so we'll be there on Saturday. And Christy Miller, who is the person in charge of the county environmental and volunteer her, not committee, but her department. She will be there, and we'll have lots of flamingos to talk and educate people. And we're also going to have an arborist, and he's part of our board, so that we know that many, many people have questions about trees, and we don't really think that they are aware of all the changes that have gone through in the last year. So we've taken on quite a bit of research and also education that we're doing at our table, so we hope everybody will stop by at our table on Saturday. And I think that's about it. Do you have any questions? I know we're looking forward to meeting with all of you, the whole group, getting together to find out what it is you expect of our committee, board, and also to really put 2022 into perspective and focus on the environment, and let everybody know that you can come to our meetings and ask questions. And we do some really great work, research, and we also have excellent relationship with staff, and they do such a great job bringing us the answers to our questions that our residents bring to us.
This is one of these boards that we've got a lot of talent on our boards across, but the talent on this one is exceptional.
Mhm.
We appreciate everybody
Yeah.
serving. Council, any questions or comments?
No?
Thank
Okay,
you very
well,
much. Look
thank
forward
you
to
so
meeting.
much. Appreciate it. Good to see everybody.
That brings us to the public hearing portion of the meeting. Public hearing portion of the meeting is now open. The first item is item 19, first reading of ordinance number 2021-23. An ordinance of the City of Port Orange, Volusia County, Florida, rezoning property consisting of approximately plus or minus 34.6 acres located north of Charles Street and Sugar Mill Elementary School between McDonald Road and 5th Street from two-family residential to planned unit development, and approval of the Madeline Commons PUD Master Development Agreement and Conceptual Development Plan, authorizing revision of the official zoning atlas, providing for conflicting ordinances, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date.
Move to approve ordinance number 2021-23.
Second.
Public hearing item ordinance number 2021-23 has a proper motion and second. Item is open and on the floor for discussion. Welcome back.
Thank you. Good evening, Penelope Cruz Planning. The applicant is requesting to rezone the subject property that's a little over 34 acres from R2D, two-family residential, to planned unit development, PUD, and approval of the master development agreement and conceptual development plan for the Madeline Commons MDA. The subject property has had the existing future land use designation of urban medium density 4 to 8 units per acre and the current zoning of R2D since at least 1985. If the rezoning is approved, the MDA will establish the framework to develop the subject property with 149 single-family units. The applicant would then have to submit fully engineered subdivision plat and plans, which would be reviewed by the Staff Development Review Committee, and then ultimately come back before the Planning Commission and the City Council with the fully engineered plans. So tonight's just zoning. The PUD proposes a maximum density of 4.3 units per acre, which is consistent with the density of the existing future land use of the subject property and the existing residential subdivisions in the surrounding area. It's an infill development and is served by existing public infrastructure and services. The conceptual development plan shows the general layout of the 149 single-family lots, stormwater improvements, open space, common open space, tree preservation areas, public roadways, and off-site roadway improvements. The subject property would be accessed from the Madeline Avenue, McDonald Road, Charles Street area, and 5th Street. All the streets in the PUD are proposed to be public streets. And although the traffic analysis shows that the proposed single-family development is anticipated to generate less trips than the current zoning if it were to develop under the R2D zoning as a duplex subdivision, the PUD does still require certain roadway improvements. The PUD includes a modification to the curve that transitions Madeline Avenue to McDonald Road into a roundabout at the entrance of the subdivision. This roundabout would be an alternative to installing a new street entrance along the existing curve, which could potentially be a traffic safety issue with the visibility around that curve. According to the Federal Highway Administration, roundabouts are a safer alternative to 2 or 3-way stops and signalized intersections due to the reduced vehicular and pedestrian conflicts and the slower speeds necessary to navigate that roundabout. Also, as a public benefit, to assist with the on-street stacking westbound on Charles Street during pickup and drop-off times for the school. The MDA requires the developer to dedicate additional right-of-way along Charles Street for a right turn lane to be constructed as part of the subdivision improvements. The proposed PUD will meet and exceed the minimum requirements for tree preservation and landscaping. The subject property will be served by city water and sewer, and irrigation will be provided by a well. The concept plan shows general areas for stormwater retention. Again, fully engineered plans would have to come back and meet all city requirements and St. John's River Management District requirements if this were to be approved tonight. But the applicant has demonstrated with the concept plan level that they are able to meet our 25-year, 24-hour storm event without causing flooding to adjacent properties or polluting receiving water bodies. The request does include two policy issues, and that is to have a maximum building coverage of 55% and a minimum open space of 32%. And that is because unlike conventional zoning, like the current zoning that's on the property and the zoning in the surrounding area, PUDs require 60% of the property to be set aside as PUD open space. That's in addition to open space on individual lots. That's not required with conventional zoning. So this additional open space that's required of PUDs offsets the reduction that's being requested as private open space on individual lots. And we've seen this a lot with many of the PUD requests recently. So staff is recommending approval of the proposed rezoning, and the applicant is here to answer any questions you may have as well.
Before we hear from the applicant, do we have any questions of staff? There being none, let's hear from the applicant. See if he can talk us out of it.
Okay. This one?
Yes.
Okay. I'll get it going for you.
Penny, I may have some questions for you if you don't go too far.
Okay. I'll be right
Yeah, don't go home.
Don't go home.
Patty, I'm gonna bring, yeah, same here. After we hear from the public, I'm gonna bring you back too, so.
Oh, thank you. Well, good evening, Joey Posey, 420 South Nova, attorney for the applicant. And this one's a long time coming because we've been at this for, gosh, it's going on, probably a year and a half now. And some of the context to this, I think, is important, and some of the history just to walk you through. And Penny did a great job kind of summarizing where we are today. But some of how we got here is important, especially for the folks out in the audience, because I know everybody, at least there's a number of folks that came to the meetings. I know you guys, made your attempts to attend them too. So, kind of connecting the dots of how we got here is very helpful. So, like Penny said, it's a 35-acre infill project. Again, up to 8 units per acre based on the future land use. And that category, even though it's not necessarily entitled for it, multifamily, et cetera. But the existing zoning does allow for duplexes, and that's been the case. You can build duplexes on this property today if I wanted to go and get an approval for it. So, we went into it with that in mind, that's not what we want. That's not what I know the folks in the neighborhood want, just from the feedback. And listening to them, that's kind of what the narrative painted as we moved forward with how this project evolved. I like to point out this interesting slide just to give some folks some context of what property we're talking about, because this is the old McDonald farm, and it's been that way for gosh, I mean, it's as long as the folks out there can remember, it's been that way. And this just gives you an idea of some aerials of what it looked like. It was a cleared piece of property, functioned as a farm, and that's kind of what the expectation of what you're going into. That this isn't necessarily there's some nice wooded areas out there today, but that's the setting the stage for how the property's been used. And that doesn't necessarily say anything about what you're entitled to do, but it does tell you a little bit about the topography of what's out there. Going on my timeline here, 2005, when folks were looking to punch Madeline through this area, that they had a plan that was looking to do townhomes for about 210 units. That didn't necessarily go anywhere, but that was kind of the expected norm of what they thought you could get out there, and that's where we started. In that area, that how do we do something nice? How do we do something that we could do a very quality development where it would take density to do it, but that was where we wanted to present and start. Yeah. So the initial plans in early 2020 started with 254 units. The pushback just from the residents and the hesitancy of, my gosh, that's a lot of units. This is a little scary, and I understand that. It's perfectly, it's a normal reaction to something like that. And so we decided, well, let's go back to the drawing board. How do we maneuver to where we try to make everybody feel like we're being good neighbors and be a part of their community? So, the first rendition of the plan wound up moving towards a lower density. We added additional open space. We tried to capture more tree areas and trying to bridge the gap of how do we make this work for the community. And again, there was still some pushback. Obviously, some folks were coming on board, but again, we're trying to get everybody on board, or as many as we can. So the third resubmittal that we made showed 209 units. We added the traffic circle. From our perspective and what we were hearing from folks is that's a dangerous intersection as you make that turn off of Madeline and coming around that corner. So the easy solution is, well, how do you ease the traffic and the speed of traffic? And the goal for us was, well, a traffic circle. If you get folks that have to move at a reduced speed but still keep traffic moving, you reduce the number of conflict points and how the traffic has to maneuver a three-way stop. So that makes the most sense from our perspective. And again, that's the engineers that also looked at this too, and especially, this actually came from Sans Lassner, who made this suggestion, who, his expertise is, he's the traffic engineer, he's the expert when it comes to this. And again, it's our perception of how we solve the problem. It's not necessarily, we're committed to it, but this makes sense from our perspective and from the perspective of safety. Again, the pushback, it was, we were looking at this, and again, it's just the unit count, people in townhomes, that this isn't something that people want. So we said, not a problem. This is, I think, the elevations that you guys saw. These are not the most recent ones. This is the old project, but it gives you a sense of the quality we're trying to do out here. But here's what we wind up getting to. We got to the 149 unit single family development, which is a reduced number. From our perspective, it's tough, but at the same time, it's the right thing to do because this is what folks in the neighborhood want. You can still do a very nice development at 149 units, and it's a little less than you probably could, probably what we were anticipating, but we can still do something very nice out there and try to help the city with some of the issues that the folks in the neighborhood have pointed out to us in terms of drainage and traffic, which is something you can only accomplish through the PD process, because if this was straight zoned, a lot of that doesn't get discussed. It doesn't happen. So again, this is a good alternative, and we're happy to do it. You incorporate the safety features, as you can see from the plan. You have still the roundabouts there. We have the right turn into the school for the stacking, and I know, and I'm sure all of you know we're talking about making that right into the school. There's a free fall ditch right there. And as part of that right turn in, that's improved. That gets piped correctly. You have a right turn in, and that's a monumental fix for, I assume, the kids that go back and forth day to day walking that area, and especially improvements for the drainage and the traffic flow for parents picking up their children. We're not changing any of the representations about an HOA maintaining the community. It's just as important to us too that the quality of the community is what's the selling point here. That we have to make sure that we maintain that, and an HOA is the mechanism to do that. We decided to also look at, and I think I may have mentioned initially we were looking at about 170 units that we could probably get out of this, but it wound up, after you take all of the city's land development code requirements, that we could put together a 158 unit duplex development. That's where we ended up. And it's not pretty. It doesn't have any bells and whistles with it. It doesn't have any traffic improvements. And that's the goal of the exercise, to say, for somebody, that's the plan they could build. That's not our plan. That's for whoever wants to move in and say, I want to subdivide this piece of property, that here, have at it. But again, and I think the neighbors recognize that too, that that's not something they want to see either, and that's not something we want for them either. So, and again, you don't know minimum HOA. The open space is a very different calculation, and I think there was a memo in the staff report that may have mentioned that it's several acres of open space that you lose when you go this direction, which it's just the minimum requirements of how the PD functions versus
Yeah.
the straight zoning functions. Again, this design's the 449 unit design for the PD, much better. It includes a number of pocket parks. The overall open space, like I said, exceeds what the minimums would be in the straight zoning category. We're meeting all the tree protection, and 81% of the specimen trees on site we're actually preserving, so we did try to be conscious about how we were designing around those trees, and there's a large wetland that we're preserving. So there's a lot of environmental concerns that went into how the layout worked out. Again, HOA, not a problem. The advanced traffic improvements, that the flow of the circle, and again, this is the traffic engineers, and this does make some sense to me from a just a practical perspective, that the circle makes safety a little, makes safety better for folks out there, that you slow down the traffic, you cut down the conflict points with folks making maneuvers on the road. And you can also, while we're at it, improve that right turn into the school and fix the drainage. And we're also would be fixing the drainage off of Charles too, or off Fifth Street. Fifth Street. That because you have the homes fronting there, from the initial plan you guys saw there was a buffer area that we were proposing along that strip, and we had to remove it because of the loss of the townhome development. But there's a blessing in disguise to this too, because when you do put homes that have to front that, which are the identical size homes as across the street, you have to improve that drainage area. That can now go, that ditch gets piped. Now it's brought up to code today. It makes the drainage system better for everybody, especially the surrounding neighborhoods and how the interconnectivity of the drainage system. And we do have the engineer here to answer any specific questions if you do have any, but that makes sense to me, that as to a better alternative than a straight zoning product that could go out there. This is an example of the homes that you could build on these. These are the same ones that we showed the neighbors, and I believe that a lot of you guys saw them too. That that's the intent of the subdivision. This is just a summary of that neighborhood meeting for those who couldn't attend. We had 2 meetings. That's one more than the code actually requires, and 2 more than the code would have required about 6 months ago. So, and again, those are the same concerns, and we're trying to listen because this is their neighborhood too, and we get that. And at Planning Commission, I think that that's the same thing that resonated over there too, and that we got that recommendation from those folks also. So honestly, again, we have a staff recommendation approval, Planning Commission's recommendation of approval, and I want to stress that the PUD and the way that this has gone about, this is a product of the folks in the neighborhood too, that this is a much better alternative than the straight zoning. And again, I'm here to answer any questions. We'll continue to work with these folks. They call me, whenever they get the opportunity. I'm happy to take their calls, and there will be a subdivision that has to go forward with a lot of these details fleshing out. But again, they've been a pleasure to work with, and I'm here to answer any questions.
Jonathan, why don't you begin?
Goodness. There's a lot to digest there.
Oh, goodness.
I have been hearing about this project for a few months, and I've heard a lot of concerns. I appreciate what you guys have done to listen to the residents and to hear their concerns and to have flexibility and adaptability in this project throughout the process. In the beginning, I know a lot of residents reached out to me and were very concerned. They did not like the idea of having all the townhomes, and I know they were extremely vocal about it. I heard about it long before this meeting was ever scheduled. Yeah. But nevertheless, I appreciate you being responsible and being responsive to them.
I appreciate that.
I think that was handled well. The only thing that I was going to ask about is, I believe there was at one point a 20-foot landscape buffer, and that has since been scratched from the project, as I understand.
And it has, and it was, if we're referring to along 5th Street, the problem that we're going to run into is how narrow that rectangle is, and the depth of the lots, if you go single family, eats up a lot of that space. And if I guess if you could reduce the lot sizes to under 100, you probably could get, in terms of depth, you probably could recapture that area. But that was the benefit of the townhomes, that if you clustered, you could maximize additional spaces. But again, we found in other treat areas that we could preserve. And for instance, there was a clubhouse proposed out front of where Charles and Fifth was that turned into green space.
Right.
We tried to recapture it in other areas, and also too, it's there's the little blessing there that ditch would have remained as in the same condition. So you get also the added benefit of now we're piping Fifth Street because we're building homes there, and that is I would suspect a big plus category. And I know that the loss of maybe that buffer was a little disappointing, but just the layout of the project kind of dictated it a little bit. But you do have something that's a very big positive that you get out of it.
Right. Forgive me, you've given me quite a few slides here, so just a second.
Joey, while he's looking at that, can you go back to that illustration and show the buffer where he was talking about?
Oh, sure. If you're looking at this slide, and I think you can see my pointer, there was a buffer along the Fifth Street here, along the road, and part of it was that we were able to, you had townhome buildings, so the depth of those are a lot shorter than
single family.
Single family. I mean, it's just the nature of the use. If I remember correctly too, I even think the PUD dictated, the code requirements dictated that buffer to some respects also.
Yeah.
So when you go single family to single family, which is consistent with all the neighborhoods.
Are we talking about a buffer, or are we talking about a setback?
No, it would have been a buffer.
So how would people get into the driveway?
No, well, you wouldn't access it that way. There was another internal road.
Got it. Okay. It involved an additional road.
Yeah.
Got it.
So the road comes off, take off the impervious, and
Gotcha.
You add pretty much a lot of that space gets reincorporated into the single family lots.
Okay.
Gotcha.
All right. So now I want to just shift gears here for a quick second to talk about traffic with this, because that's going to be probably the biggest concern when you add this much development to one area.
Yes.
I'm having a hard time understanding the roundabout and how that's going to work.
Sure.
Just based on your drawing, it looks like the way it runs, it would be rather complicated to actually make the right and come out if you're heading westbound. It just doesn't seem like that road goes into the center of the roundabout. It seems like it's going to the left around. I don't know if that's just a visual thing or what.
I think it is, and I can let, if you wanted to, we have the representative from Lasseter's office to speak to it. But a lot of it, this is a little conceptual, and we did over at Newkirk's office try to lay out the roundabout as per FDOT requirements of what this would look like. And you're going to get a full permitting, and you're going to have to get reviewed by traffic at city staff to engineer it to the specificity of here's the clearances that are needed, here's how the layout would work. But conceptually, it does work there.
Back to us with the site.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. But from a conceptual sense, this works, assuming that again, it's the direction of you guys, but and again, the safety aspects is what we're concerned with and trying to aim for. So.
Right. And we're confident, or I should say you're confident, that this roundabout is a safer alternative to the other options that could be done there. Based on what
Putting
you've
on
heard from
putting on
FDOT.
my engineer hat, I guess I have a hard time believing it isn't, just from the nature of how it would function. Because if you're slowing traffic down and you're cutting down on the number of points people have to do at a stop, then I mean that's just just putting two and two, that does make some sense. I can't necessarily speak to the degree or how that would function, but that's why we proposed it, and that's why Sam Lasseter mentioned it. He said, if you're going to do it, that's the way to try to capture it through the PD process.
Well, with this being so close to an elementary school, I just think safety needs to be a priority when it comes to the traffic pattern.
And we thought, and that's a very good point, because if you look at the roundabout's layout too on the, if I can find the slide. It's hard to tell from here, but there is a island that we did think about, and as part of this, to get folks that you only have to cross one lane, and then there's an island you can stop on, and there's going to be signalization that happens with all the pedestrians moving, but they don't have to cross two lanes. It's simply one lane, take your time, to go the second lane. So that was something we thought about too when we were trying to lay this out.
Councilman Foley, if you want his traffic engineer to speak to it, but I've had years of supervising traffic engineers, it is every study I've ever seen, statistically safer to have a traffic circle compared to an intersection. And if you want him to state that, I'm not a traffic engineer, I just played their boss before.
Right. I think it'd be a good idea to get.
It would not be a bad thing to have on the record.
Sure.
Hi, I'm Matthew West. For the record, I'm not an engineer, I'm a transportation planner, but Joey is correct. The person that recommended this is Sands Lasseter, who has 42 years of engineering and transportation engineering experience. And when we were emailing and discussing about the concerns about people and the speeds they were traveling around that curve and how to slow them down, he just said, I think it should be a roundabout. And so not only he, but George Galan in our office, who has 33 years of, and he's a professional engineer. He's working with Newkirk on the dimensions and design of the roundabout. Another important point to make is, and Joey touched on it, pedestrians cross one lane at a time, and it's much more predictable to know which way the traffic is coming from if you're a pedestrian. Also, because it encourages slower speeds and lower speeds, when you have an accident in a roundabout, it's typically less severe, and you'll have fewer accidents because you have fewer opportunities for conflict with traffic. So even if you do have an accident, it turns out typically to be a side swipe rather than a T-bone or a head-on collision. And now I'm going to throw my planner hat on. But other reasons this is a good idea. Also, it should help with air quality in that area, because cars aren't sitting at the stop sign and idling. And from the air pollution standpoint, there's continuous movement. The vehicles are moving continuously, although at a slower speed. Also, there's an opportunity here in the roundabout for landscaping and beautifying that area and making it into a nice feature, as opposed to just a T intersection with stop signs and paint on the surface. And Joey is right there that when the pedestrians cross, there's a separator, so you have a little refuge area, so you only have to cross one lane at a time if that's what you want to do. So to sum up, based on Sands Lasseter's input and George Galan's input, which you put their experience together, they have over 70 years of traffic engineering experience. They basically, due to the horizontal curvature of Madeline in the vicinity of the proposed access driveway for Madeline Commons, as well as there's also that Saul Street. There's an intersection at Saul Street that's in very close proximity to this area. A roundabout is believed to facilitate the safest development access while simultaneously minimizing the conflict points at the entrance to Madeline Commons and encouraging slower speed in the northbound and southbound directions. And unfortunately, Sam couldn't be here because he could be up here saying the same thing I am.
Very good. And I think the good way to sum it up is that we're obviously hoping for the best, but actually plan for the worst. That this is the safest alternative. Again, you're going to see this again as part of the subdivision review. So a lot of those engineered details will come out. That but in terms of conceptually and a lot of the engineering that's already went into it, this makes sense from our perspective. This makes sense from staff's perspective and our experts' perspective. But again, I have no stake in this, one way or the other. To be honest with you, but we're trying to help, and that's the whole goal here.
Did you get everything?
One last question.
Yeah, of course.
Hopefully this could be a yes or no.
Mm-hmm.
Are you intending on having any kind of like signalized light crossings here at the roundabout?
That is the intent, yes.
Okay.
And if I remember correctly, I think some of them are identified on the concept plan.
Okay.
It's a lot of the details, but again, it's trying to help folks understand, exactly what the level of detail that goes into this type of development.
Just want to get it all out there.
Yeah, of course.
I think I've done enough. At least for now.
For now. Chase?
I've got a few things. I might be a few minutes, if you don't mind. First of all, great to see you. Great tie. I got to know where you got it. So I'm looking for one just like that. So we're going to talk afterwards. My compliments to you. You continue to bring us. Professionalism. Every neighborhood that you go to, you walk into the Lion's Den quite a few times, but you end up making a lot of friends afterwards because you listen to them. You don't try to shove something down and force something in them, and that's how you do business. So I appreciate where we're going. I still have some concerns that I'll address in a few minutes, But from where I was at that first meeting and I can't believe we're where we're at
Right.
now.
Mhm.
I can, because you've listened and you adapted, so you continue to do that. I did have a concern from a resident. However, I will read her one portion. I must commend Attorney Posey for his handling of the past meeting. He's been very professional and always returns emails and phone calls when I have questions. That's Janice Nixon. Again, kudos to you. One of the concerns, the original proposal design called for 20-foot landscape buffer between the development and 5th Street. That has been removed from the current design. I think it's important to have some kind of significant landscape buffer along 5th Street, helpful for wildlife and whatnot. Can you address that? real
Yeah,
quick?
and I think to build on Councilman Foley's comment a little bit, that I wish I had a chance to talk to Janice about this. That part of this is what you're currently
She couldn't be here, unfortunately.
Well,
but-
yeah, and what you're allowed to do currently is I could put those houses off of 5th Street, and that's by right you could do that. Not to say that I would do that, but that's what you could do. And part of maybe where I probably should have bridged the gap a little bit here is that the real point of the 20-foot buffer was to try to accommodate the clustering of the density, trying to make sure that it's in some respects it was numbers to try to make, if we're going to make townhomes possible, that's the way to do it, because you don't have the depth that you got to deal with on a building, unlike a single family lot, which 110 feet. And there's only a few hundred feet we're talking about in terms of laterally moving along that where we can lay out lots. So, the alternative from the developer's perspective is, well, I've got to lose the landscape buffer along the 5th Street, but I can add landscaping to the front end of Charles, where, I've removed the clubhouse. I can try to capture some of the additional landscaping that happened because of some of the other buildings that got removed on the west end of where the ponds are next to the school. And in exchange, I have to sacrifice that 20 feet because, that's the feasibility of the project.
Sure.
I mean, otherwise, the incentive is to just do the straight zoning project. And I don't want to do that. And, as unfortunate as it is, I think the other part to this too is you get the pipe, the drainage in that area is piped. Like you get the better drainage system as a result of this too. So as much as I wish we could have kept the buffer, there are some major positives to being able to do it this way.
Well, that transitions into the next concern is drainage.
Yes.
We just want assurances to those surrounding neighborhoods. We had an issue not too long ago with King's Landing, in which, it was an oversight, call it whatever it was.
Right.
But the surrounding neighbors had flooding that they'd never experienced before. So, I want to make sure that our surrounding neighbors are not going to be experiencing
Right.
that through oversights or incompetence or anything else that would occur.
And I do have the engineer of record, their firm here, and the engineer who I believe designed the stormwater in the actual for this project. And I'm just going to let you know just my little points to this, and then I can obviously get him to come in and represent the actual drainage. But the requirements
Not
are
necessary. I just want to make sure I'm communicating
yes,
that.
that's 100% what's going to happen. That we have to meet more stringent standards than a lot of the surrounding subdivisions that were built have to now. And as a result, we have to retain more water. We have to make sure that this doesn't flow off site and impact somebody
Right.
to a much greater degree than would otherwise be possible if you just left well enough alone.
And during the construction phase as
Yes,
well.
and that's exactly, and I don't mind going on the record to say that yes, I agree
Yeah.
with you completely.
Yeah. The other one, of course, is traffic. I mean, that is what it is. But I'll move to mine. Would you mind bringing back up the images of the homes, please?
This one?
Yes.
Yes.
Now, I know where we're at is better than where we were,
Mhm.
and I'm going to be a yes tonight, but I still want to make, my opinions known regarding these types of homes, because I fear we're creating more sunset coves. I don't know if you're familiar with that particular subdivision. It's very similar to what we're doing. It's a drive around and then just comes around like that, and you've got homes stacked on top of each other. Wayne, can you let me ask you what is the distance between those homes at Sunset Cove?
Yes, sir. The Sunset Cove homes have 5-foot side yard setbacks. You have 10-foot separation between the two homes.
And how about this project?
And that would be the same for us in the side yards.
We're looking at the same thing.
But again, but part of it isn't. I know that some of this is a philosophical disagreement. That you know, from the perspective of folks moving to the area, that you know, and I get that there's the larger lots for a lot of folks is what they want, but for a lot of folks out there, smaller is what they want.
No, I get that, but it's what comes with the smaller.
Sure.
It's the danger that comes with the smaller is what I'm concerned with, and what I get more calls about this than I do Dunlawton. And what I mean by that, let me ask you, because maybe you can rectify it here. You know, are you having 2-car garages, and can you
Yes.
fit 4 cars on a driveway?
Yes.
You fit 4 cars on a driveway.
Well, not the driveway. No, you 2-car garage, 2-car driveway, but we do have also off-street parking for folks in those pocket parks too.
You have off-street parking?
Yes.
Parking lots available?
Yes.
All right. Because here's my overall concern. What developers are doing today, and I can appreciate it, because you know that when you have a wider lot, then it's more expensive, and we're pricing people out of the ability to get a home.
Yes.
I get that. I understand the economics behind it, but the safety protocols behind it is what I'm concerned about. Because when we're building with more depth going this way, we don't have a front yard anymore. So when people are parking on the curbs constantly, which it happens and it's going to continue to happen, we create a very dangerous pass-through there. We create a very difficult pass-through for emergency vehicles as well.
Right.
I mean, I ride, you know, take my kids, when we ride our bikes or our scooters, whatever, we're praying
Right.
every time we go through Sunset Cove. Because it's nasty, and that's what I fear right now, is we're creating another one of those, and it's against my better judgment to approve it, but I'm going to, because that's where we're at right now. But I would like it, for the record, to look at that and see what our options are in the future. I just don't want every subdivision that we create going forward to be a hazard.
Right. And I wish I knew more about Sunset Cove to kind of compare. But again, that's our concern too, because from the perspective of folks moving in, you know, you don't want to move into a problem. That you want to.
They're going to move into a problem.
And I understand. But at the same time, it's if you do have 2 in the driveway, 2 in the garage, and you do have the pocket areas for folks if there's overflow. You know, our perspective is that it should. We shouldn't have.
You're putting the right amount, but people aren't using garages anymore. They're using them for storage. It is what it is, and that's, you know.
That's not the developer's problem either. The person
I
has
understand
to,
that. I understand
you know,
that. But
use their garage.
that's the reality of it, of what we're in now.
I understand.
So yeah, I don't hold the developer responsible for that either. But I'm just looking at the end product and what we have to deal with.
And that's
at the end of the day.
and I appreciate that, and I will pass that along, because that's something that's I've heard it in other places too, and I understand the concern too, because you know I wouldn't want to live in something if that's what's going to happen. But
And I get it.
Yeah.
People want to choose. I'm personal liberty, and I want the developer to have the property rights to do what they want to do. But we have to look at the safety measures behind it as well at the end of the day. So that's all I got, man. Thanks. Drew?
On projects like this, I mean, you know, look at where we started,
Right.
252, 54, whatever, and then it was pared down at 4, 5, 6 times.
Yes.
And so things like this are about compromise, and so that's where we're at. You got a big compromise on both sides. You know, I'm sure some of the residents wanted nothing there. That's not feasible, because you know, it's a viable piece of property, and that person wants to sell it. Somebody wants to develop it. You know, they have rights to do that. So this minimized the impact as greatly as possible, and it shows what can happen with zonings and some of these things, and PUDs and hard work. So I applaud you for the hard work, and applaud the residents for, you know, I'm sure not everybody is on board with it, and I get that, because you can never please everybody 100%, but this was about compromise, and the final result is, you know, going to be a compromise on both sides, so well done.
Scott?
So, a couple of quick comments about roundabouts. and I see Bobby Ball's still here, so he can even, probably jump in on that a little bit. But
20 is removed.
so Bobby is a very talented engineer in his own right, and I play one on TV.
Go sit here.
No. So on the one of the benefits of being on the TPO board is that we have seen a tremendous amount of studies and examples of the roundabout craze, I'll call it, or the fad or the change or what's coming. And I can assure you that roundabouts are going to become a very, very popular thing in the state of Florida. Statistically, it is totally indisputable, like the city manager was saying, they are just safer. And I know when people first initially hear about it or they look at it, they're like, that's the craziest thing and that's nuts and people aren't going to know which way to go. That's just not factually true.
Right.
It's just not accurate. I mean, there's places, entire communities in Florida now where that is the go-to style of traffic control. I mean, you look at the villages over there, they're all over the place over there. There are even 4-lane roundabouts, which I thought was really I was like,
Crazy,
I got to see
right?
this. But so you know, roundabouts done correctly. By the way, there is they kind of, now they don't call them roundabouts anymore. They call them modern roundabouts because they have actually figured out how to design the roundabout that there is no choice which way to go. It forces you to go the correct way. I mean, you literally have to drive over top of concrete barriers or do really stuff that would just be indicative of somebody who couldn't drive down a regular road or through a regular intersection. So the modern roundabouts are really good. If anybody's interested, I don't want to beat the horse on roundabouts, but if you go to YouTube, Florida Department of Transportation, FDOT has some incredibly good videos and statistics and examples, and there's a lot of good stuff to see if you really want to learn more about roundabouts. But I think in this area, that a well-designed modern style roundabout would make a lot of sense because keeping traffic moving but keeping it moving safely, and the safely part is the number one, but doing that makes it does make sense in that area. So enough about roundabouts. Chase brought up a great point, and I was kind of thinking along the same side, the same mindset in Sunset Cove. Part of the problem is these high density developments, a lot of them have HOA regulations that don't allow for cars to be parked on the parkage, which is that area between the sidewalk and the street. Yet we have a city ordinance that allows it.
Right.
What's the forecast here? Is there going to be sidewalk?
Yeah.
Kind of trying to have to make.
Well, yeah.
Is there a parkage area?
Yes. Well,
that will allow for parking.
We do have overflow in the pocket parks, and again, if part of looking at this is to ensure that there's a sufficient amount of overflow for that, I believe we do have it. But again, in talking in terms of it, without knowing what Sunset Cove, the actual logistics of how that works.
So for just the sake of the discussion, we can forget Sunset Cove. So the difference is cars parking in the street,
right,
versus cars parking on the parkage, which is the area between the curb and the sidewalk,
right,
that little grass strip. And the city has an ordinance that allows that to be legal,
right. And
however, if an HOA says you can't do it, then you can't do it. Then what happens is that forces, and I think this is part of the problem in Sunset Cove, so what that then means is that now they are going to park in the street.
I see.
Because parking on residential streets in a municipality in the state of Florida is legal. As long as you're facing the right direction, 12 inches to the curb, all that good stuff. So then what you get is you get this maze of cars where you got one parked here and here and here and here and here, and trying to navigate down the road is a serpentine type of a thing. And that really creates a lot of issues for the residents. It's just not something that's a really conducive type of thing.
Right.
So I get my question to you is, will parking be allowed on the parkage area?
Well, again, to be honest with you, that conversation hasn't occurred. If I don't think that there's necessarily an intent on our end one way or the other in terms of from our perspective. I think having the traffic flowing with unobstructed is best case scenario, and however the means of getting to that is what we'd want to. And if through HOA or whatever means of how that occurs, I'm open to suggestions on how to accomplish that. If I think that some of our overflow is going to solve some of this for some folks, I don't know if it'll be perfect, but Again, I'm happy to delve into that a little bit to see what I can do, and if there's a suggestion to how to accomplish that without, running afoul of what the code says, then, I'm happy to work on that. So that's not a problem from my perspective.
Yeah, I'd love to know what the suggestions are either. The only option is making the houses wider,
Right.
because you don't have that problem where those neighborhoods are. Because I have a very similar setup in my neighborhood. One way in, one way out, just a little U, but back in the 90s, they were building them wider, not longer. So
Right.
that's not a problem when parking is like that. So that's, I hope you can figure it out, because that seems to be where developers are going
Right.
and wanting to do that. So, which is good. I get it. It's good for the economy, for allowing people to be able to afford a home that they couldn't, that has a wider lot. But to solve that problem, hope you can do it.
Well, I appreciate it. I
When
will
we see
try
the
to.
site plan, we're gonna have a lot of the same conversation all over again, but you've been previewed for that.
Right.
And just to comment on the two-car garages, all the builders say it's a two-car garage, but when you go in and you look at them, unless your car is the size of a go-kart, you're not getting two cars in. Two golf carts maybe, but today it's just the way it is. I mean, you go even in the neighborhood I live in, and our homes aren't that close together. They are a little bit bigger lots, but there are a lot of the driveways. If that person chooses to buy a Ford F-150 club cab and park in his driveway, he'll be lucky to have an extra 10 inches before his bumper's crossing the sidewalk and being in violation.
Right.
So, even the driveways, they're not long enough, things like that, all that kind of stuff. So these are issues that the council hears from regularly, and we get it too. What happens is development gets built, people love the home, they buy the home,
Right.
and then they realize later that this is a problem, and then it's a problem 149 unit times.
Right.
It's not just one house every 15, it seems to be a big problem.
Well-
So that's a major concern with us that we would encourage to continue to work on.
Yeah, and I think that's what I'm receiving here too. That
Yeah.
there's things that we can look at to see what we can do, and some of it is a function of feasibility and how this project gets accomplished. But if there's a way we can do it, like Councilman Tremont said, we got our homework and trying to figure it out, and I'm happy to try. So.
And I will say last comment is, this is a older area of our city, but it's one of the best kept secrets in southeast Volusia County. I grew up in Lantern Park, which was behind the school. As a kid, in this a long time ago, I used to,
A very long time ago.
we used to play in those woods. We used to, the McDonald farm that you showed the example of, the one thing it's missing is the slaughterhouse that used to be there. It goes back years, and orange groves and all of that stuff, and growth is inevitable, and private property is going to be developed at some point. This is the last piece, and the problem that I see, or that I'm really wrestling with, is that it's just coming in late, and so everything else has pretty much already been done around it. And even though I'm honestly grateful to see that you guys have come down from the 200 number to the 190 number, down forth and so forth to 149. 149 is just too many for me. It's just still a lot, and what I would say is, and I hear it all the time, the developer wants to be part of the neighborhood. They want to be a good neighbor and a good person. I think they need to bring this number down some more. I just think that 149 is still a lot, and I'm
Right.
conceding that you guys have come a long way, and I'm appreciative of that.
And
149 more in this area, because of the configuration of the school and the roads and what's already there, it's still just a lot.
Right, and
So.
and I do appreciate that, because I can understand it too. I grew up off of Madeline, so
Sure, yeah.
I understand a little bit of what's going on here too, and the one thing that, and I stress this to the folks that I talk to every time, that it's not who you're dealing with today, it's who you're dealing with tomorrow. And what I don't want to happen is that this becomes so infeasible for folks in this project that for somebody who wants to move in and says, that would be a nice 158 duplexes, and I'll do the minimum and I'll build it and get my money out of it, and that'll be enough. There's somebody out there that will do that, and I know this isn't necessarily what everybody wants, but I think it's somewhere where at least we can all agree that we all work towards and got towards where we can all, that we compromised, that there's stuff on our end that we had to take off the table. There's stuff that they, again, from the get-go, that we had to work towards, and that this is an excellent, in my opinion, compromise, but I do recognize where you're coming from, because I know there's some emotion attached to this area for folks, and I do say it sincerely when I say we do want to do the right thing, so.
Yeah, and to your credit, and also to the discussion, we started off tonight with Penelope reminding us that this property has been zoned for 4 to 8 units since 1985.
Right.
I hadn't graduated high school, for the record, by then, so I wasn't responsible for that.
1985 was a great year.
Yeah, I'm sure it was. So
83 was better.
I get that, and when I do talk to residents, I let them know that something is going to, whether we want that or not,
Right.
something will be there. I get that, but we're at the point now where we're having a conversation and we're asking, if you truly want to help the community, help the city, help us get to a lower number. I'd still love to see this number. I'd love to know, is there a way we can get to 130 units? I mean, can we do that?
In a perfect world where the developer could make money off of that, I think they would.
Port Orange, they can make money on
Well,
it.
and I understand that, but if, from the perspective of trying to fix the traffic and, some of the traffic issues of, that roundabout's not gonna be cheap.
No, but you're at 130 units, bigger lots, a little bit bigger home, more value. I mean, doesn't it all kind of, in the calculations, I think it comes there.
Well,
and it's a market in Port Orange that's available.
Well, and again, I think it's a disagreement on what market we're talking about for this area. And I understand that, the folks value their community and have an expectation of what they believe that in their community is the desirable type of house. And, it just isn't a feasible product. That if you go any less than 149, you're talking about doing something that is almost counterintuitive from a developer's perspective. Why would I invest the money on 149 when I can build 158 in terms of duplexes for cheaper? And I, that's not necessarily to say that, I'm thinking
I get
about
that, and that's the difference between a developer who truly cares about our community, wants to be embraced by that, versus somebody, it's just a money thing, it's just a turnover.
Well,
type of a deal.
But I think I disagree a little bit from this
Yeah, you can.
perspective.
That's fine.
Because, bringing a roundabout to the table and trying to help and approach the school board about improvements we can do for them is not something a developer necessarily needed to do. If the goal is just to build 158 units, then build 158 units and call it a day. And in trying to preserve and use the PD process to capture that open space and some of the design elements, we're going to agree to disagree. But in this case, I think the developer has made a monumental effort.
Doesn't hurt me to ask about.
No, I understand. Right? I understand, and I appreciate it. It's well taken, because I understand how important
And
this
that
is.
will be, again, at the next conversation when we see a site plan. Right
Right.
now, we're doing a zoning ordinance change.
Right.
Scott, you got anything else for now?
I'm good.
I'm going to sit here and tell you, we've had conversations. I was at those neighborhood meetings, and we're talking about a zoning change here. I don't love it, and as the guy up here whose home is closest to it, I'm not going to love anything being built there. But I also know the reality is that's not how it works. This is not a yes or no, will something be built there or not. When we're talking about a zoning change, we're talking about what will be built there.
Mhm.
And when you and I first talked, I hated the idea of
Yeah.
townhomes. I hated it with a passion. And I'm not anti-townhome. I think we do need that type of housing. It just didn't belong there. It wasn't what we had there. And I do appreciate the amount of time that you've taken with meetings and time with the citizens in that area. And I'm going to tell you right now, no matter what you build, I'm not going to love it. It's just reality. But the idea here is that I want you to continue to work and take the feedback from the people here and the people out there to continue to work to improve it as best you can.
Of course.
Knowing something's going to be built there, I know that's going to happen. All that said, I appreciate you standing up here and getting beat up by these guys because they know what the heck they're talking
They do,
about.
yeah.
We've been through that. And for myself, knowing that I'm not going to love it, I appreciate the fact that we have come a very, very, very long way.
Appreciate that.
whether it's a roundabout or not, I can tell you from living there and living close by, some sort of traffic pacification there to slow down that turn. That turn, the speed limit jumps from 25 to 35. Cars jump from 25 to 50, 30 to 50. They do it rather quick. And that pacification, whether it be a roundabout, an intersection, whatever it is that we do there, is something that will improve that area. So I'm appreciative of that, and I know the impact that that'll have, because it's a high pedestrian area too, not just because of the school. It's still a very highly walked, highly bicycled area, myself included. So I will see it and I'll be using it. So I appreciate that. With that, let's hear from the public. Anyone here care to speak to the item? Come on up. And thank you for your patience. You got 3 minutes. Tell us who you are.
Yes, Lori Becker, 865 Christie Drive. I had not planned on coming up here today. I did not have any notes prepared, but here I am. And that's because I've been very passionate about this since November, when I showed up unexpectedly at a planning meeting where they didn't know I was going to be there. And I've attended all meetings, and I've emailed everybody up here, and I've had conversation with about half of you. And I'm here to say that I am so happy to see that we are at least down to the single-family home concept, which is what the neighbors have wanted all along. I'm here still as a voice for the community. And we're talking about revision coming soon, the next possible meeting, so I'd like to just get right to that. I agree. We need to reduce density. We need to continue to reduce density. It really is about safety and quality in the neighborhood. We are talking about Sugar Mill Elementary, 600 students. You know, most of them are going to live in this development. We cannot have cars parked on the sidewalk. We can't have serpentine driving through a neighborhood with kids that are going to be on their bikes and walking to and from school. Thank you very much for bringing that point up. It's just way too much of a possibility that the safety is going to be a concern if we're stacking cars on a sidewalk with a tight driveway. This particular development as well. Why not? This is an area that is old. We're trying to, develop it into the community, and I'd like to continue on that trend. We've got Bryan Cave. We've got $1 million castle on Saul's Road. I mean, come on. Why can't we have better homes in this particular development? So let's reduce the density down to maybe 130 would be really nice. I agree with you. Okay, so how are we going to do that? Well, stacking at the roundabout. That is a concern for me. I live on Christie Drive. I'm the closest to that roundabout. I am the closest, as well as a handful of my neighbors back there. So as soon as I pull out onto Christie and we got 20 mile an hour, 15 mile an hour school zone, I hope that I can get out and make a left-hand turn without being stuck and stacking at the roundabout. And guess what? I'm not the only one. Is there any chance we can put the picture up on the screen? The first picture, the color-coded picture? Because I'm going to show you something that I don't think you guys are aware of. I've lived in this neighborhood for 35 years. I've been here since the cows were mooing on the field. I can tell you that there is a piece of land right on the corner where Madeline becomes McDonald Road. It's a tree-lined corner. There's a duplex, piece of property, just sold.
Finish your thought because you're out of time.
Okay.
Thank you.
So please consider the driveways that are being built on that corner that have to come out into
Thank you.
Old McDonald Road. Okay.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Lori. Who else we got?
My name is Pamela Covert. I live at 1022 Charles Street, directly across from this new development that is happening. We've been there 20 years, and lately the traffic is outrageous. The schooling they said it wasn't increasing, but I have never seen, probably because I used to go into the office, now I work from home. And we have tractor trailers that come down the street all the time. And I just I don't understand why. If they're gonna continue to do this, Port Orange is, we're gonna go in debt again, we're gonna have to redo Charles Street because it's falling apart already. You must have seen it going down it. It's falling apart. I don't understand, but I like the concept. It would be nice if we could go to 130 instead of 149 because of the extra traffic. But when we try to back out of our driveway, now we back into our driveway because you can't get out. It's terrible. So that's my concern. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pam. Who else?
Hi, Mayor, Council, Kat Atwood, 872 Sugar Grove Court, Port Orange. This is also my neighborhood too. I do have exception with the roundabout. I know that let's just say, if you look for something on the internet, you can find what you want to find. You can find good results if you want to find them, and you can find bad results if you want to find them. I would ask that somebody look into the research about this kind of traffic roundabout near an elementary school where 7 and 8 year olds are trying to cross the street, either walking or cycling or running and talking to their friends, and traffic is going to be trying to make these turns on this roundabout. If you go down there, Mayor, I know you live nearby, the width of that road, I'm not even sure how this is going to work, where they're going to put the roundabout. And I'm not an expert, I'm not an engineer, I'm just somebody who drives that street every single day going, I don't see how they could put a roundabout in here. And if they do, how the people are going to get off Christie, how I'm going to get off Jackson and Nixon, how people are going to come off Charles, but how Sauls is going to get out. So once those cars start stacking, people on Sauls are going to have to wait on the goodness of somebody to let them out to enter Madeline to come down that roundabout. People on Christie, I don't even know how y'all are going to get out. It's bad enough now. If you start stacking up at a roundabout, Christie is just going to have to come out and use Nixon and try to go back up towards the condos or townhouses to come out. I do want to say we are appreciative of the neighborhood meetings that they held, because they did start out at 250, I think, something homes. And you're a trooper. I mean, the first meeting was not kind, and but results came out of that. I still would like the number to go down because I don't think our roads can handle it, and I think that's going to impact us having to redo Charles in particular. Charles is falling. Charles is failing in a lot of areas, and you're going to add maybe 400 more cars by putting these houses in there, and it's definitely something we have to consider. The traffic on Charles is horrible now. When Fish comes in there, and now you can't go over to Herbert, people are using Charles as a shortcut, and that comes up to my street on Nixon, and so it's just that neighborhood, the density in that neighborhood is way more than I think it is intended to handle. I would like to see the number come down too. Thank you for bringing that up, Councilman Stiltner, because my number was 125, but I'll give you 130. It was good. But that, back up at Saul's, 7 and 8 year olds. I'm glad you took the duplexes out. Thank you very much. Or the townhouses. That was huge because nobody wanted townhouses back there. And the other thing I'd ask you before you agree on a roundabout, go to the pavilion. Just watch people try to get around that roundabout, and now throw 7 and 8 year olds in there. Just asking you to consider it. Thank you.
Thank you. Who else we got?
Hi, my name is Carol Payton. Again, I live on Christie Drive with all the rest of my neighbors. And we're a little concerned also about drainage in the area. We've had problems in the past, and with all of this development going on, it's only going to make some of it worse. We would like to see the city come in or the developer come in and take care of some of those problems. They built houses around us, made them build up. Christie Drive was one of the first streets, little streets in there, and now we're being overwhelmed. Traffic, people coming in, building new houses, they make them build up higher, which the people who were originally there are flooding. So please look into that. We are concerned about it. And again, thank you for taking care of our city. And let's hope that this roundabout, if it goes through, will work for everyone. Christie Drive, to try and get out there in the morning, Lori's right. It's like a death trap. I watch children walk across the street. I walk my dogs down there, and kids don't know whether to run, stay, walk, you know, because there are several different little streets for them to get out. Once the roundabout is in there, it's going to make it even harder. So I'm hoping you will put more people out there to cross these children. You may need extra guards out there. There is one at Saw Road. She's very good, but you'll need one at that roundabout. Our children's lives are too important, so think about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? There being none, back to council. Comments or questions, either staff or for the developer? We'll start where we started the last time. Jonathan?
Just want to make sure, a clarification. Each one of these lots has 10 foot on each side, or is it 5 foot on each side?
It'd be a 5 foot on each side for a combination.
So between two homes, there would only
10.
be 10 feet.
Correct. That's correct.
I remember a conversation, I believe before I was on council, about the size of an air conditioner. Where are the air conditioners planned to be located on these homes?
The air conditioner, as it currently, if I remember correctly, I think we put a special setback in the MDA.
Shelby Cruz Planning, there's a special provision to address that in the MDA so that they wouldn't have to come back like we did with Woodhaven. And so they have that 8-foot separation for air conditioners, any accessory structure, even the concrete pad, if there's a side door, that's addressed in the MDA to make sure that there's adequate separation there. And the 5-foot setback is consistent with almost every new subdivision that's been approved in the past several years now.
Okay.
What else you got?
That's it for right now.
Okay. Chase?
Just a couple things to follow up with. I would like to see also some lower density, but I do understand the need for it to be profitable. So I'd love to at least to be able to explore and see what you guys can do, because that's the only way you're going to be able to get to solve the parking. I don't see another option. But I understand. You know, I can't rezone it to 130 at this time. So I mean that's I understand where we're at. But I hope you'll look at the numbers and see if it's possible.
Of course.
I'd like you to pay close attention to when you're getting into the site plan, so to prepare for that. Those houses up front when you're entering in and exiting in.
Yes.
Because I've had a number of issues around the community where, because parking is going to be, people can park right on there. And when you have a car that's right away in the street when you're pulling into a neighborhood, that's a cause for major concern. Or, you know, so I'd like you to be mindful of where those initial houses on the intro into the neighborhood is. And in light of the comments before, I know you mentioned the amount of studies that indicate that roundabouts are better. I would ask that do you have any specific studies of roundabouts like this right near a school that you can bring later on?
Yeah, I don't mind doing a little, at least even approaching the engineers to say, give me something comparable.
Even if it's to give people some comfort.
Right.
Yeah.
Just something that's comparable that we can all conceptually understand that this is how you would function next to a school. Yeah, that's not a problem. I don't mind doing that.
I'm good. Thank you.
All good. Scott?
At one point, there was some discussion that maybe you and I had about an agreement with the school.
Yes.
To where there would be access points for students that would live in this particular area to be able to enter in on the school property from the back. Is that something that's been accomplished?
We asked, we offered, they didn't want it. But there's a reason that it's a safety reason.
Yeah, that's
safety and security.
Yeah, I mean I understood why. It's just I can't that we did make the attempt like we were requested, and I was happy to do it. But
Well, the kids have access, and so will random
right,
people too.
exactly.
So
That was their perspective too.
Well, I think the idea he and I had talked about was a rear gate access where a staff member from the school would be there for 30 minutes in the morning, 30 minutes in the afternoon, so all the kids aren't having to come out to the busiest streets.
Yeah.
So, and then those gates can be locked up just like they are at Spruce Creek High School and other schools throughout the community. I mean, It's not something that's not being done, it's being done all over,
and,
so.
and I am
But I mean, at
more
least
than
you have that-
happy to do it. It's
Yeah.
just, from their perspective, I think it's just the general points of security of,
It's a
the
moot
more you
point.
add, the more
If they don't
variables.
want it, it's a moot point.
Right.
Yeah, well, maybe something our staff can engage them and see if we have any, we'll take a look at it at least.
Fences engaged only keep.
Penelope's got something to say about this.
Yeah, I just want to ask, so I can tell you right now, the Volusia County School District more than likely will not. They have redesigned all their schools that had different access points like that. Everyone's following single point of access.
Okay.
So they've specifically gone back and done improvements throughout the entire county to close off other access points and have that single point for safety reasons, ever since all the school shootings and things.
Have they made any decision about making bigger parking lots and stuff in the schools?
We continue to engage them about that and to
That'd
get
be quite
to get access roads, to get cars off of our public roads. We
Gotcha.
continue to have that conversation. And I did want to just, while I'm up here, Councilman Chase, they do have on their concept plan, anywhere there's an intersection already on the concept plan level, even before we get to site plan, they have at those those first homes there, non-vehicular easements, so no car can go there. You're not allowed to have access or parking. They have non-vehicular easements drawn in those areas on intersections, so you can't park.
They have curbs there or what? Or, I don't understand.
It's an easement that you
People
can't.
are going to park wherever they can fit their
But
cars.
it can be enforced, is what I'm saying, is there's an easement that restricts that, so if somebody tries, there's a legal mechanism to enforce not having access or parking there.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks.
Penny, stay close. Scott, you got anything else?
Yeah, so just a quick comment on can a roundabout go there? They would have to acquire the right of ways, and I don't know if that's been looked at, but and then the roundabout in the pavilion is not a modern roundabout. But guess what? We don't have at that roundabout. We don't have serious car crashes there. So it might look funky sometimes, but we're not having the issues there.
I've never had an
Not
issue
that I'm
with the pavilion.
not that I'm hung on a roundabout. I'm just stating what the facts actually are. And then lastly about the drainage, I agree. I know with a resident this week, it's wet out there. We've had a lot of rain the last couple of weeks, and once the ground has decided it's absorbed enough, it's tough. I will tell you and share with you that two major factors, one in our favor, one not in our favor, that is causing a lot of concern in that area. One is the city of South Daytona several years ago, to resolve some of their flooding issues, put some massive pumping systems in at Nova and Reed Canal. And guess where that water gets pumped to? Port Orange.
South.
Comes south. So that has been a major factor in a fight that is ongoing that we are having to deal with, because once it's pumped out of their city, they don't worry about it anymore. So that's exactly that's a major problem, and that's had a huge contributing factor for the last 10, 12 years, a while now at least. But our new Public Works and Public Utilities Director, Lynn Stevens, who I don't see her tonight.
She's hiding.
Is she hiding?
Yeah.
Okay. She has done a tremendous job on trying to target areas where we can improve upon clearing the ditches, restoring them back to the levels that, where the growth isn't there, and all of that stuff. And we have seen a lot of good results. In fact, in your neighborhoods down in this area we're talking about, I would almost venture to say that 3 or 4 years ago, before we've gotten some improvements going out, a lot of those streets would have had standing water in them today with all the rain we had over the last few days. So we are mindful of that. I appreciate the comments to reiterate. We'll keep working on it. We got to keep working on it. We don't have a choice. So great positive comment, but I just want you to know that is something we talk about frequently. And if you ever have any questions, I think Lynn Stevens was a great person to reach out to that can tell you what we've done. We've invested as a council in equipment so that we have our staff and our team can get out there and maintain the swales and the drainage ditches and the pump stations and the outfalls and all that kind of stuff. So we are mindful and working on that. That's all I got, man.
Penny, quick question. Irrigation, you said, is via well. We don't have reclaimed water in this part of the city, do we?
No, sir.
Okay.
No, sir.
That's it. Council comments or questions? Final?
Final comment, just, I know I grilled you a lot, but I don't want it to be, I don't want it to drown out the fact that I am appreciative of the amount of work that you put in. And I think the amount of time and the amount of grilling that council does put in is evident that we care about our residents. We want to make sure that they're getting the best. Meanwhile, our developers are free to do business as well. But to bring it all together, and I appreciate you being the bridge to do that.
And I do appreciate it, and it is well received. And I know that just receiving this feedback that we got to have responsive comments. And again, I'm trying to do it in a way that it's not going to be perfect, but there are things that I'm happy to look at and see what I can do. And that's the promise I've made every time I've talked to them, to the neighbors, to you guys, that we'll figure out a way that to do the best we can, and just making this a feasible project. So I do appreciate it.
I still want that tie. Let me know.
Oh.
Anybody else? Final comments?
Final comment, just, I agree with them. I think bigger lots, bigger homes, if there's a way to get it in there, if you'll look at it, I think the value will be there, and I believe that the less units, the better, really.
Well, and just to clarify.
That's his final comment. He's not asking you a question.
Oh, I apologize. And again, I was only saying that, again, it's an
He's
open...
still not asking you a question.
I'll leave it alone. I will leave it alone.
Council, anything else? Call the roll. Before I do that, just a reminder, this is a zoning question. We'll be seeing this again when we have a site plan. Call the roll.
Councilmember Foley.
Yes.
Councilmember Trayvon.
Yes.
Councilmember Stilber.
No.
Vice Mayor Bastian.
Yes.
Mayor Burnett.
Yes, 4-1. I told you I'm not going to love it.
I understand.
You know what you need to do before we come back for us. The public hearing portion of our meeting is now closed. We're going to go to the regular agenda portion, but before we do that, we are going to take a much-needed 10-minute recess. Regular agenda item 21 is ordinance number 2021-13. Ordinance number 2021-13 is an ordinance of the City of Port Orange, Volusia County, Florida, amending the Land Development Code, Chapters 2, 15, 16, 17, and 18, updating the current signage regulations to adopt content-neutral regulation by amending the definitions, updating sign standards redundant to include new sign opportunities, removing redundant and out-of-date provisions, providing for codification, providing for repeal of conflicting ordinances, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date.
Move to approve ordinance number 2021-13.
Second.
We have a motion and finally a second. The item is open and on the floor for discussion.
Tim Burbank, Community Development. Finally here with the sign code update before council. I think basically in early spring we came before you with a workshop to kind of go over the framework of what we were proposing to change and some modifications on that based on that feedback and the discussions with the Planning Commission. We have a final draft of the sign code. Kind of get it started from basically the Reed versus Town of Gilbert case, which kind of required signs to be shifted from content-based to content-neutral. That's basically, you know, our code was initially full of a lot of content-based specific regulations for different types of signs, and we're not consistent across the board. So we removed pretty much a lot of the content-based and with the content-neutral. We also took this as an advantage to go back into our sign code to see what type of improvements we can make in that, kind of make it kind of a little bit of a negative into a positive. We removed conflicting and unclear regulations that were challenging to administer and enforce, provided some more flexibility and creativity for different types of signs in our redevelopment areas and also along the major corridors, and continue to regulate the signs that impact the city so they have a positive effect on this community there. So there's a couple main components of it, just going to briefly go through that and turn it over to any questions. And first is content neutral sign regulations. What are those? Those are pretty much what's in front of you here. We can regulate based on the maximum size, the height, the number per parcel, per lot, per tenant, also specific locations, visual clearance triangles, spacing between signs. In different types of zoning districts are such as residential versus commercial, based off of corridors. Also, we can enforce materials and period of use. All those are things that we can do in content neutral sign regulations, which we provided in the sign update then. So kind of just a brief touch on the prohibited signs. For the most part, the prohibited signs that we had previously had in the city of Port Orange, such as your feather flags, signs in the right-of-way, roof signs, the streamers, signs on the telephone poles, those have historically been prohibited in our code. We continue that. We just basically made them content neutral regulations then. So there was not much change in that except just basically the wording of how those codes were written. Second was the exempt signs. We basically went through that and clarified that to be content neutral. That applies to flags, the street signs that you see from the city standpoint, temporary yard decorations, and also you know, for sale signs and the signs that are within the yards then. So that's pretty much staying consistent with what we had before, except they basically are content neutral, and we clarified there so there was more consistency in the interpretation.
Before you move, who put this slide together?
I did.
It was your decision to put the Griswold family home in there?
Yeah.
Love it.
I'm just glad he didn't use my home.
I didn't know that about you, man. That's you
And my wife wasn't too happy about the
man.
time frames, about the Christmas, the decorations in there. She thought it should be about 10 days, and she was threatening to come to the council meeting to oppose this ordinance, but I told her that was conflict of interest, and she had to stay home. So we can move a little bit quicker here so I don't get in trouble. I'd appreciate that then. The other thing too, which we had a lot of problems with too, is the old sign code had a lot of sign measurements that were written out and described there. What we did was we kept those that text there, but also we started putting a little bit more graphics in there to illustrate that then. That is to hopefully assist in interpretation of the code over a period of time. You get different people that review it, you get different interpretations. The graphics should help in basically keeping that consistent across the board. The signs that we basically had, the permanent signs, really did not change those as much, just essentially like we were saying, we just went through and updated those regulations to be content neutral. We divided our signs instead of basically being per use, such as gas station, restaurant, we classify them by the district areas. We have residential, which includes all our residential zoning districts. We have a multifamily institutional district, also all our commercial properties. When we do get mixed-use developments in there, we have regulations for those. And then the last one is RC, which is Ridgewood Corridor. We've historically had some regulations in the code that basically provide additional kind of breaks or benefits to properties on Ridgewood to kind of help those redevelop there. So we wanted to keep that as a standard there. So pretty much for all these types of signs, monument, subdivision entry sign, drive-through sign, there's a corresponding table there which gives the specific dimensions or requirements, and if it is permitted or allowed or not then. Also too, we found this a little bit easier to follow through, so when developers, business owners, sign contractors are looking at that, then they get a little bit more understanding of what's allowed on their property. We did add some alternative sign options that were previously not in the code. One was kind of a design of the monument sign. I think everyone knows the, it's the, forgot the name of the restaurant I used to, Stonewoods. That monument sign basically with the piers on it, that went through a variance process to get approved. Currently, that's not an allowed code sign, but it's basically a very attractive sign then. So if it's done correctly, we wanted to give people the opportunity to do that. We also clarified that the outdoor dining areas where you see the string lights, that is permitted in an outdoor area or outdoor gathering space. We also allowed for the blade signs and the there that basically come out project from the building then, which are currently not allowed then. Also too, the use of sandwich board signs, which was conflicting in there whether they could be allowed or not allowed. We made those allowed within all the commercial properties, subject to having to comply with ADA requirements and making sure that clear pedestrian pathway is still provided then. The last one we added was for the Ridgewood Corridor area, and this was kind of a post sign. This was because we deal with a lot of properties that are narrow, also businesses that are starting up that don't have quite the capital to basically spend on these larger signs that we were requiring. This gives them another opportunity to basically have a smaller sign on that property, and we're hoping stuff like this would lead to them to use this type of signage versus trying to go with feather flags, multiple yard signs out there which are prohibited then. So it's just trying to give another opportunity to properties on Ridgewood to redevelop them.
What's the max height?
What's that?
The max
height,
height?
I believe, is 6 feet tall.
Okay.
On there then. Again, those still have to meet all the dimensional requirements in terms of setback from the right-of-way and the visual clearance triangle. It's just smaller lots gives a little bit more opportunity for them. And this right now is only allowed on the Ridgewood Corridor. The next item is digital signs. We've get quite a bit of inquiries from commercial businesses along Dunlawton, Clyde Morris, Nova Road about being able to use a digital sign. Currently, the code allows for multi-tenant signs to have the digital sign there so they can display the tenants. What this would do would open it up to also single-use tenants there. They would be able to have a digital display on their sign. It would follow the same requirements as the multi-family or the multi-tenant sign right now in terms of 60-second static display. Also, no animation there. You can't have stuff kind of thrown around there. It has to be static. And it would be basically 25% of the sign area that they could have in. So for instance, most of the signs that you see for a single-use commercial building is 48 square feet. That way they could have a 12 square foot max LED display area then. That would allow them to advertise their hiring specials, a lot of different things. They can kind of control that message then. So the sign code would allow that, and that would also apply to gas stations too for the LED gas numbering. Types of temporary signs. Again, we kind of reassess that with this. We have pretty much 5 categories there. First is going to be the banner sign. We clarified that has to be either on the building or can be attached to 2 poles in the front yard. No more tying banners between pine trees or palm trees then, what you see. Also put some more standards on there in terms of the time frame. We gave them business 60 days in a calendar year for the use of a banner then. As we spoke, we added the requirements for sandwich board signs and also some requirements for the bag signs that you typically see when a business changes ownership. They throw a bag sign on there. We've had some that lasted for months and months there, so we did put regulations giving them a specific time frame where that can be on before they've got to get that new panel.
What about, you know, there's, and I mentioned it to somebody, I don't know if I mentioned to you or to the manager's office, it's a while back, and I haven't been there in a little while either, but right by the old gas station on Nova and Spruce Creek Road, they had a sign out there, smoke shop. I think that's what it said on there. Why was that allowed?
You talking about the kind of the sandwich board sign right by the right of way?
Yeah, it was like a stand-up one that they just put out there. Was that the name of their, I can't remember, was that the name of their
I believe
their
it's the name of the
business?
business, but under our code, once this comes into play, that the reason why that's out there, there was in the executive order when kind of COVID hit, there was relax on some of the sign regulations, and that's what led to that to be there. With the adoption of this new sign code here, that executive order will go away, and those businesses will be required to comply with the ordinance then. So that will basically mean that they can have that sandwich board sign, but it's got to be within proximity of the entry of the building, not out by the right of way.
Yeah, that's
I think
about
it's the
where
one
it
that
was, and I thought it was very trashy, and it just made our area look
Yeah,
terrible.
it's basically got a bungee cord wrapped around it when it's tied to the tree then.
Right.
So that will be cleaned up along with all the feather flags on that. And there's also a sign that I think they put plywood up and painted it brown. That is going to have to require to have a sign panel on there. So there's a lot of properties that basically we will be cleaning up there in terms of what temporary signs they've had on there for the past year and a half to conform with this code and go back to the standards of what Port Orange looked like probably a year and a half ago in terms of temporary signs. The last part of the temporary signs that we have is we have two aspects there. We have one is site signs. This is basically for any property that is either for sale or for lease. They're able to have a sign advertised, I believe it's 3 acres or less. You can have your standard 6 square foot real estate sign on the property. Larger properties can have up to 32 square feet to advertise the properties for sale. And then the last is a yard sign. This is basically can be any type of 6 square foot sign. It could be an election sign. It could be your yard company. It could be the name of the business. Every residential lot will be allowed to have one of these on their property. Every commercial property will be able to have one per tenant then. Again, we've got to be consistent in how we apply that. So we pick basically for commercial, one per tenant, residential, one per lot. We know that at certain times of the year, there's going to be a demand for more signs to be put on a property, really during an election. So what we did on this case, the way we wrote the codes, that says basically during an election, 45 days prior to that election day, you are allowed to have up to 4 of these yard signs on your property. They could be 4 for candidates, or they could be 4 for your favorite football team. We don't care what the content is. It's just basically giving the number of 4 basically during the election period to be used for however a homeowner would like then. So that's how we try to be content neutral on making sure that basically during the political season, enough signs can be there for candidates that they want to support.
We have a problem extending that to 60 days for election seasons?
I don't think so. I think basically it's 45 days is what we, looking there's no requirement for it to have to be 45 days. I can verify that and we can.
I know people like to put them out, a little earlier than that for all of their.
We can verify that 60 days is good then, and then when we bring this back to second reading, if this is council wants to make it a 60, then we can make that
and
change.
It's not something I would die on. If the council wants to keep it at 45, it doesn't matter to me.
45 's
I'm
good.
just throwing it out to.
I think the magic was 45 when you had an August election, that after July 4th, you'd have roughly 45 days before election day. And July 4th typically kicks off election seasons. That was, I think, the magic behind the thought back in the day when it was created.
45 days of the election on November 2nd basically means that 4 signs could have been put on people's yards, I think, on Saturday. Except there's kind of the time frame then. So, but it's up if council wants us to look into 60, we can bring that back as an option.
I have no problem with 60.
I don't have a problem. I
don't have a problem with 60.
I don't have a problem with 45, but I thought I'd throw it out a little earlier for folks.
This is the time to do it, first reading.
But you have a problem with it?
60?
I was looking at Robin, she looked like she had a thought that
45's good.
Con-
No, I'm just,
conflict
you can
or-
still put one up all year long, but during election you can have up to 4, is how I'm understanding it. So
Right.
they still can have one up.
Gotcha.
Prior to 45 or 60, doesn't matter.
I would.
So
I would
it's
go
it's
with
one
60.
for 365, and then you can have 3 additional for X amount of days.
I think we'd be safe going with 60 in the event that somebody puts 2 or 3 out, we get a code enforcement and they're 5 days too early. I think,
I concur.
Yeah, I'm with him.
Yeah, but then if it's 60 and the same thing could happen. They can still do it 5 days early.
Yeah,
I
people aren't
mean,
gonna-
Yeah,
people
you're
aren't gonna put it
floating
out
on or,
before
depending
that.
on how election day
45's
falls,
plenty.
on
45's
or
plenty.
around July 4th, you could.
44.
Let me do this, Jonathan, 45 or 60?
60.
Chase?
60.
Drew?
45.
Scott?
57.
I knew it. How did
Sorry,
I-
I'm good at 45.
I'll break the tie and say 60 for second reading. I'll approve it as is tonight, but I'd like to see the change to 60 days for second reading.
There you have it.
What else you got on it?
That is it, unless you had any other questions.
Council questions or concerns, comments? Would anyone here care to speak to the item? Back to us, council, final comments? Call the roll.
Councilmember Foley?
Yes.
Councilmember Tremont?
Yes.
Councilmember Stiltner?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Basham?
Yes.
Mayor Burnett?
Yes, 5-0. Additional items, city attorney, Shannon, thank you for sitting up here with us tonight, and putting up with us.
Absolutely, it's always a pleasure, and I have no comments.
Excellent report.
She did ask me, she said maybe they shouldn't do the FSU signs or something like that. I was like, no. You mentioned football and
Unfortunately, the city manager is not going to give the same excellent report because he's got something for us on legislative appropriation. We've narrowed it down to these 3.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, Wayne.
It's just a status update. There's no action required from council, but in August, we presented you the full list of projects that we were considering. Since that time, we've worked with Pittman's group, talked to a couple of the legislators, and what we put in here, these 3 projects are the 3 that we believe provide the best chance of getting funding during the cycle. They're infrastructure based. It's what we understood from the legislature met their priorities. They're far enough along that allow us the opportunity to get them through design and in construction. Like the pipelining, we can already do that now. So the mayor and I will be attending the legislative delegation meeting on October 6th with the mayor speaking. And we'll keep you updated on when we hear dates about a potential possibility of going to Tallahassee this year if that happens. If you have any more feedback on that, I know that Councilman Tremont wasn't here when we did the full presentation. If you'd like us to spend more time going over all the details with you, we'd be happy to do that as well.
No, I think we had our personal conversations, and this is right where I wanted to be. I only wanted to go up there with infrastructure requests.
Infrastructure. Big ticket items. Wayne, the only thing I want to add is that after October 6th, you and I met with Representative Leake. I'd like us to do the same thing with Senator Wright as well, if we could get some one-on-one time with him.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I have only one other item. The county's traffic engineer, John Cheney, who Councilman Stiltner had asked about coming to speak at one of our meetings. So you heard from Bobby Ball tonight that they're doing a session in New Smyrna Beach. He did agree he's on our agenda for October 19 to come do that presentation here for you.
excellent.
City,
That's all.
yeah, that's it?
Yes, sir.
City Council Committee reports. Art House? Who has Art House?
Oh, that's me. I don't have anything right now.
Okay. First Step Shelter?
Nothing new at this time, and I haven't been to a meeting yet, but I've had some dialogue, nothing to report right now.
Okay. Port Orange, South Daytona Chamber of Commerce. Wayne and I usually meet with them once a month, and we had pushed our meeting to October 1st and ran into another schedule conflict. So we're just going to punt that to our regularly scheduled meeting on October 15th. Also, the 30th is the member appreciation. So on September 30th, the member appreciation event. Anybody who likes Giuseppe's Pizza, you can pop in, and they did not do this event last year because of COVID. That'll be at the chamber. Roundtable of elected officials. Our September meeting was canceled, so I've got nothing to report. So the question I have right now is there any other business that comes before us this evening? If not, have a good night. We'll see you all tomorrow.